What's up, guys? It's your boy Josh Showtime, along with my man Josh Valles. This is Showtime's Fight Phone. We talk all things fights. First and foremost, shout out to everybody who peeped our last video, our last couple videos. Thanks for giving us to 1K. Now the next goal is to get us to 2K, 3K, 4K, get us to 10K. But definitely want to give a shout out to Josh, man. Thank you. People do love you. They actually like you much better than me because they always talk ish when I be getting on. When I'm on Instagram, they always got something to say. I don't know what it is. You might not like black people. I don't know. But but no, I appreciate you for hopping on, man, each time, giving your insight. You obviously know what you talk about. So it's been a pleasure. And let's keep this thing growing.
Yeah, man, 1,000 views, less than 10 videos since you and I, joined forces here. So thank you for having me on the show. Always been a fan for a long time watching your show. So to be on here, really appreciate it. And yes, anybody who's watching, give us insight, give us feedback, say what's up in the comments. And we appreciate everything you guys are doing here, getting our views up and so forth. So much kudos to y'all for tuning in as well.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, the more views we get, the more we can actually try to monetize from this, the more content we can do. Like, shoot, look, realistically, you gotta understand, like, podcasting is the new wave. So, like, that gets us into getting credentials to even go to fights and being able to talk to fighters. Like, we do have fighters that we know that we are going to bring on, but this gives us the higher level fighters that we can bring on to the show. We could talk to, and I'm a king of no cut cards. Like, I've already had professional fighters mad at me. You can ask Bubba Jenkins; he does not like me because I ask questions, and if they don't like it, they don't like it. It is what it is. That's what we're here for. So, I'm trying to interview some some head honchos, and I know Josh does as well. So, get back into the nitty gritty. First, we had two fights this past weekend. We had two guys that's in the top 10 pound for pound. That is Canelo Alvarez and also the monster Inoue. Both had title fights, and both were in very entertaining fights. We've seen people get dropped in both fights. Let's start off with the Inoue fight because that was the shorter fight. That was the fight that honestly went under the radar. You know, we all know about the Canelo fight, and we'll talk about that and the meanings behind that. But let's first start off with the monster. He went, and he didn't do what he normally does, which is he goes in and he dominates straight from the get-go. First round, he finally got touched up, and he got caught slipping with a big shot, went down. But I want to know, what did you think of the fight overall? And then obviously when you saw him get dropped.
Yeah, I mean,
We're not gonna lie. Also, we're not gonna lie and act like we saw that live. He fights in Japan. We saw that ish hours later. So go ahead.
yes, thank you for highlighting that. That definitely was the case for me as well. Me personally, I feel like from an overall fight standpoint, yes, this fight went exactly how most of his fights went, right? Came in, hit him with some great counter shots, some great left hooks, right in the middle of the mix there, whether they were in the center of the ring or whether Inoue was against the ropes. He was really getting the best of Neri there. So I think overall the fight went exactly how I anticipated it going. It's in Japan. He's on fire right now. We know all that good stuff. What we didn't anticipate was that first round there where he got clipped. And in my humble opinion, I think he got clipped almost if it wasn't for a featherweight, it would have been a knockout of the year. Because the way that he got clipped and got knocked down in that first round, I mean, he almost did a complete 180. I mean, really.
Yeah.
So
That's the way you don't want to get dropped. Like, he was going into the punch. He made the punch worse.
right, he did a complete like almost turnaround. So that wasn't as expected, but in these when you are such the favor as Inoue was going into this fight, some of these fighters sometimes tend to come out more cold, body not warmed up all the way, which could have happened here. Neri back against the wall, coming into Japan, looking to win, has a lot more adrenaline. So usually that underdog, even with the Canelo fight that we're going to get to in a moment here, you see that they come out with more fire, more, energy to start the fight. But once Inoue settled down, again, combinations were flowing, double jab, right hands were flowing. So solid fighter overall. Hate to see that it was in Japan again. I really would like to see this guy fight in America. Not even for
It ain't happening, brother.
yeah, I know. Not even just for me, but I just think overall for the world to see more of him. I do think he does have a skill set that is appealing to a mass audience, right? I think his fight style is not just good for his type or Japan people, right? I think it's best for people all over the world. This is a true pound for pound star. So would love to see it in America, but right now, got to give him his props where it's at. He's 31 in his prime. Whether you have him number one or number two, got to respect him for this performance. Showed a little bit of his human nature, right?
We all are
He's
human.
human. He's human. So excited to see where he goes from here. But I do want to say, now that he did get dropped in that first round, I do feel like more boxers are going to be less hesitant to call his name out, knowing that if he can get clipped, then it can happen on any given fight.
Yeah, I would probably check on that just because Neri is a power puncher. Not to mention that Inoue will counter you and he will also knock you out too. So it's like you gotta still be cautious because he still has that power threat. He's honestly pound for pound one of the hardest punchers in the world. So you have to watch out for Inoue. But I will say I give him so much credit just because you get knocked down. A lot of people don't know how to react. Like some people can gather themselves and then they can, repurpose it and then dominate the fight. We've seen Floyd get hurt. He's able to repurpose it and then he ends up dominating the rest of the fight. For him to get hurt, we saw the dog that's in him. And it's not to say like Mike Tyson's not a dog. This is not to say Earl Spence are not dogs or anything like that. But these are like guys who I've seen get dropped and the fight was pretty much over. Like Errol got dropped for the first time in his career, the fight was over. He got dominated every second after that fight. Anytime Mike Tyson got dropped, the fight was pretty much over. He pretty much got finished. It's really a lot, and this means bringing great fighters who got finished when they got dropped. But then I brought up the Floyd, and this shows your character because when you get hurt, like you see who you are. Because at the end of the day, we just saw it with Devin Haney. He got hurt, and he got hurt in a fight before, but he's never gotten dropped. That was his first time actually getting dropped. And he got dropped 3 times in that fight. We saw that he's tough, but at the end of the day, especially after that second one, he pretty much was getting worked. So shout out to Inoue for showing how much of a dog he truly is and genuinely is. He's an amazing fighter. We'll talk about pound for pound rankings in a little bit, but we have to talk about the former pound for pound king. He is, like I said, former pound for pound king, but he's still the cash cow in boxing, the biggest name in boxing. And he still looks good in Canelo Alvarez versus Munguia in a very action-oriented, fun fight that we both expected. And first, let me give you your roses. You pretty much called the fight to a T. Like, you really did call it to a T. You said someone was going to get hurt. You said you wouldn't want to say who it was, but you said someone's going to get dropped. It's going to be an action-oriented fight, and Canelo's going to come out with a decision. That's exactly what happened. I almost was right, though. I said he was going to get caught with an uppercut and he was going to get knocked out. He did get dropped with an uppercut. He just got up and Canelo kind of, didn't swarm on him. So outside of that, what did you think of the fight in general?
Yeah, I think that your perception of the fight was mine as well. Super action-packed, back and forth. Had a little bit of everything, right? So loved what I saw from both fighters. I think that even though we can clearly tell that Canelo was just the better guy and the better fighter, we also saw, Munguia really put it on Canelo and Canelo respond, right? So I wouldn't say this was a true showcase fight for Canelo. Whether he was the better man or not, he still had moments throughout this fight where he did have to dig deep. He did have to, essentially fight back, right? Because Jaime Munguia, regardless of the fact that he was getting outclassed in the exchanges or in the overall fight, there were moments that if Canelo did not respond, Munguia was not going anywhere. He was going to stand right there in the pocket and continue to throw and continue to trade punches. So, again, good scrap. Couldn't complain about it. Didn't mind what I saw. Didn't mind the scorecards for once. Thought it was just a little closer. But then again,
Yeah, I thought it was a little close.
a little closer than I was really anticipating, but I can't get that upset because I did see a lot from Jaime Munguia. So he did put his best foot forward. I can say he did not, lay an egg like a Charlo or some of these other fighters that Canelo has faced in the past. So I did like the output from him. He just lost to a legendary fighter and who's still in his prime at 33 years old in Canelo Alvarez, and that's just what we call levels.
You know, the crazy thing is, and this kind of goes into my point in our last episode about Canelo, which is that Muguia looked way bigger than Canelo. Like, way bigger. And I've said this several times about, like, Canelo's not a big super middleweight. Like, I felt like the first couple rounds, he definitely was filling them out. But Muguia was piecing Canelo up pretty good. And, I mean, I think for a guy who, you know, did knock out John Ryder or whatever, you know, the power didn't really seem to affect Canelo at all. And, you know, we have to start putting his name up with one of the best chins we've seen, especially in the middleweight division. Like, it's hard to hurt this man. And it's crazy to even think that Miguel Cotto's little brother or big brother was the person that was able to actually hurt him bad. But, you know, Muguia does have power in his strikes, and he was clipping him a lot, but Canelo was just walking through it. Then after he dropped him, it pretty much was a wrap because Canelo just stopped respecting his power per se, and he was able to pretty much see him coming. And I think he also mentioned it before by saying Muguia was slow. I didn't really think Muguia was a slow puncher, but you can tell that it was slow compared to what Canelo's used to because Canelo was able to slide. Even when he did land shots, he was able to roll with it. And as long as you can see the shots and you're able to roll with it, which Canelo is so elite at now, like he's been elite pretty much for the past few years at it. But it's hard to hit this man clean. Like you can punch him, that's fine. He'll let you punch him, but it slides off and he takes out that sting and he's able to just keep on fighting. And Muguia had no answer for the counters, the power shots that he was landing with the counters. And at one point, I felt Muguia was a little gun shy and he was slowing down a little bit, not because he was tired, but because he was worried about the counter shots. And then, like, every once in a while when Canelo did go to the body, that also bothered him. But Canelo broke him down really well. But I will say in my critique of Canelo is that, like, I need to start seeing knockouts, personally. Like, if you're better than a guy, and I think I think he's that much better. Now, Muguia, I thought he fought a great fight. He fought as well as he could. And if anything, his stock rose for me. But Canelo and that killer instinct is personally, it seems to be gone. I don't think he has that. And I haven't seen it in a while. Like, you drop Charlo, he goes 12 rounds. And he offered nothing. I was at the fight. He offered nothing that entire fight. This fight, Muguia was open. He was there for the kill. There were times you hurt him. You rocked him. You didn't follow up. I know you want to save yourself, but at the same time, I need to see killer instinct. That's what I want to see from Canelo. What was not the Bivol fight, but like the John Ryder fight, same thing. You hurt him. You didn't get the finish. Like, I need to see knockouts. All right? I need to see it, Canelo. And I have to, and I don't really agree with you as far as him being in his prime. I don't think he's in his prime. I think he's past his prime. But I still think that he is, his out of prime is still close to his prime. So he can still beat really good fighters still.
Yeah, I think so as well. Again, 33, so a good solid 5 years, you would say, you know, in boxing terms, right? He could get 5 more good years out of himself, right? His body.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, in the way that
I think too.
so you think by 35 Canelo is done, but Terrence Crawford can be 35 and fight Errol Spence?
Canelo has 60 plus fights.
Dude,
Crawford.
we know 40 of them came from tomato cans in Mexico. So I mean,
sure, but okay, you can say that. Sure, that's fine. Whatever, I'll give you that. But at the end of the day, man, like, he's still in Mexico fighting Mexicans, and he's been fighting since he was 16. He has way more wear and tear than I would say Terrence Crawford has at 35, 36. Like, Canelo at one point, you got to remember, even at the age of 30, he was fighting 4 times within a calendar year. That's a lot. You're talking about Terrence Crawford, who literally went like a year and a half, 2 years without even having a fight. Or he'll have just one fight. And that's not any shade to Terrence Crawford. I'm just saying, like, he's nowhere near as active as a fighter as Canelo is. So I think that that's the difference between what prime and what prime is not. Also, look at Errol Spence. Errol Spence is past his prime. I don't think he's at his best right now. I didn't think, and people can say, oh, you've only saying that because of what happened to Terrence Crawford. I'm on record. You can look at my videos. I've said Errol Spence has been out of his prime for a couple of years now.
Like, we did have a conversation about this. We have before, yeah.
I was like, he is slower. He is not as fundamental. I ain't gonna say fundamentally sound, but he is a lot slower. And I just felt like the sting in his punches aren't the same anymore. You saw his fight, even versus Ugas. You compare that fight to Lamont Peterson. That's 2 totally different fighters. Like look at the speed and punches. And the thing that hurt him the most versus Terrence Crawford was honestly I think speed. He was just too slow for him. But and also he might be a little punch drunk from the car accidents and all that stuff that's been going on in his life. But that's besides the point. Point is, I just think that Canelo has way more wear and tear, and I think he got a few years left. I don't think that he has 5 years personally, unless he just wants to fight.
Who says he may not, right? I mean, at this point in his career, Canelo said it himself. He's choosing his opponents, right? So maybe he will have that opportunity where he's going to be, choosing opponents that are that low risk but high reward. Because I don't think that with me personally, a David Benavidez fight is going to happen in the next year or two, based off Canelo's, requirements, which is money, right? Me personally, look at David Benavidez' next fight. He's an undercard, right? Co-main event. That's not going to get you a Canelo fight, no matter what he does in that fight. So I think David Benavidez in itself has about maybe 3 years before he can really get that, requirement that he deserves to fight Canelo. But that's what
There's
I'm
no
saying.
way. There's no way they're
What?
gonna the boxing commission. There's no way they will allow Canelo to duck David Benavidez for 2 years. I can't see how that happens, especially with Saudi making all these fights and having unlimited money. So it's possible. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't personally see it. I don't see how they would allow that.
He's openly saying he's ducking him now because of money, right? So to your point, yes, I hope that does happen. I hope they don't. I hope they have a money obligation in place to where Canelo feels like it's worth the risk that he's going to take fighting a true Mexican dog in David Benavidez. But what I'm saying with all of this is that in Canelo's mind, he must know that his body has 3, 4, 5 years remaining of elite performance, because if he's saying that David Benavidez does not have the money to fight a Canelo, then he must think to himself that David Benavidez has time before getting to a Canelo and putting that type of money up. So I don't know. Me personally, I don't think I think 33 is the new 23. Sometimes we've seen a lot of athletes at
I
this
agree.
at this age in this day and age past 33 and still put up elite numbers. Not just talking about basketball, talking about football, baseball.
No,
So
I agree.
I feel like Canelo has all the resources necessary to still be an elite fighter into his 30s. Like we're talking 36, 37, still, pound for pound fighting. I don't think anyone beats Canelo based on what we saw for the next couple years, unless it's a David Benavidez. That's the only person in this division that I feel like gives him
I'll
a
say
true
this.
chance.
I'll say this to your point though. I'll ask you a question, Josh. I like asking questions. Simple and
Sure.
plain. Your reference of football players, basketball players, and everybody's able to stay young and while they're older and stuff like that. What's the one position in football that doesn't apply to that?
Running back.
Why is that?
Because they're taking hits from people way outside of their weight class at
Nah,
are
nah,
crazy speed. At a crazy speed.
Josh,
Yeah.
don't even try that. Josh, you know daggone well why. The reason why is because they hit people every single play. They get worn down to the ground because that's the one position where every single play they're either getting hit or they're hitting somebody. So
So a lineman lasts longer than a running back, right?
you said what?
A lineman in an NFL career probably will last longer than a running back, right?
Correct.
Okay, they're in the line of fire every time too, but what's the difference? They're going against other
Well,
linemen that are the same
rules
size.
now rules have now changed for linemen so where they don't get the concussions like they used to, and also so it's not as violent as it used to be. Granted, I get what you're saying, but you got to remember we're in a passing league now. If this was 30, 40 years ago when we're running 40 daggone times a game, I would get it. You're in pass protection now. It's not as rugged and as bad as it used to be. You can't do head slaps. You can't a lot of these defensive ends are finesse guys now, so it's not as bad. Granted, yes, they're in the trenches, this, that, and the third, but you're running the ball 25 times a game compared to 40, 50 times. So it's much different. It's much more violent for running backs than it is a freaking left tackle. I don't care. You can fight me with it. Linemen. If you any linemen are watching it, I don't care. I stand by what I say. I'm a former running back, and I stand with my guys. So it is what it is. But I mean, I would love to get another 5 years of Canelo in his prime. I just personally don't see it. Mayweather was able to do it because at the end of the day, he was a very defensively sound guy. He knew what it would take in order to stay young, which is stay defensive, don't get hit too much. Pacquiao, I don't know how he was able to do it, to be honest with you. Like that should be studied because he got knocked out a few times, and he still was able. And he had 60 fights, and he was able to still stay very, very, very good. So he's an anomaly. I will give you him, but I don't think Canelo's on that level either.
I mean, you have him, you have Bernard Hopkins, I mean, Mike Tyson is still
But Bernard
fighting.
Hopkins also became very defensive, though.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Regardless of, I'm not saying their fighting style, I'm not saying Canelo's fighting style will stay the same. I'm just saying I think he'll still compete at a high level in his 36, 37 year.
But do you see him making that transition? Is what I'm saying. You think that he's gonna, because he will have to change his style. There's no way he's gonna be able to fight like he did yesterday and say, "Oh, I could do that till I'm 37." No, it's not gonna happen.
Yes, I think he can fight a good style, a competitive fighting style by his counter punching ability. Yes. I still think even at no matter what age, 36, 37, I think your slipping and counter ability, will always be there in regards to your defense. So,
But will your chin be there? Because he's gonna end up going against other guys who can punch.
oh,
So I
we know.
mean,
Yeah, I mean those things are to be seen, but fighting style, I think his fighting style will last. I don't think even though he can be a bruiser, right? We have seen it. We saw it this weekend. He can be in dogfights. I don't think he'll personally take those, throughout his entire career. But I think that he has a skill set that is, transcending across eras, sort of like a Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. They came into the league. They were a certain type of basketball player. Now they are, they're towards the end of their career. They had to become a different type of basketball player to keep up with their body. I think Canelo is that same type of great athlete that will find that same type of like fighting style that works for him. That's still exciting for all of us.
okay, that's fair. That's fair. So after the fight, what do you want to see next, or what do you think is gonna happen next?
Well, we'll start with Jaime Mungia. I think that, to your point, you said this. I think his stock goes up. I think people look at this fight and say, "Hey, this was just a guy who was outclassed by Canelo," but it's Canelo. So we're gonna just, take it for what it is. He put up a valiant effort. He didn't lay an egg. We didn't hear about it. We heard about it for weeks when it came to Charlo, and here. We're gonna talk about Jaime in a good light because he deserves it. So I think he has some more title eliminator fights in his future
I
coming
agree.
up. I don't think he'll fight for a world title anytime soon, but I think he'll be in the mix for sure. As for Canelo, I clearly he's on a money trail, right? So I think he's only going to go for fights that make the most sense for him financially. I think one of those fights is definitely the Charlo, one of the other Charlo brother here. If we can get him in the ring, depending on his mental health and so forth. But in all honesty, I think it's Canelo's world, and we're all living in it. So we can say we want the David Benavidez fight. We would say we want to see him fight the Charles brother. I think ultimately he's just going to see who can bring the biggest gate, and that's just the era that he's in right now. And as he says, he deserves it.
Hey, I'm with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm not down for a Charlo fight. Not interested in it personally. I didn't think Charlo looked terrible in his last fight, but at the same time, it's just not an interesting fight. I don't think the Benavidez fight is happening. Canelo just don't seem interested. Bless you, babe. Doesn't seem interested at all in the fight, so it don't seem like it's likely. So I mean, I think the fight that he's probably looking forward to, the one that he wants to take, is the Berlanga fight. I think that that's what he wants. I think he's kind of been hitting and kind of been wanting that for the past year, which is lame, to be honest with you. I don't think he won Berlanga, or I don't think he deserves it. I don't think he's good enough, and it's kind of a waste of time. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, it's one thing if Berlanga still had that I knocked everybody out that I fought, then it holds weight. But we've seen him hurt. We've seen him not knock people out. We've seen him look terrible. Like, there's not really much to do there. Like I would like. Here's the thing: if it was worth the hype, which is once again, Berlanga was knocked. Even if he like started to knock people out again, and we really started to feel, it would be a massive fight. You have an American. Is he Puerto Rican?
100%, man.
He's a New York Puerto Rican daggone guy who's gonna have he's gonna have the country by his side, but he's gonna have all of New York. And you could have that fight at Madison Square Garden if you really wanted to, or obviously you can just. But I know Canelo probably would be like, hell nah, keep it in Vegas. But you want to talk money? Who wouldn't want to fight Madison Square Garden where like the legendary fights has happened, and you got a New Yorker there who's undefeated and who's knocked everybody out, this, that, and the third. But that's not the case. That's not the case. We're talking about a guy who is above average at best, whose power we realized isn't what we thought it was. And at this point, it's kind of one of those, I just want to knock off guys who haven't lost. Like, I don't care. I don't care about that.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that you brought up Edgar Berlanga, a big time prospect, as you know, undefeated, as you said. But again, to your point, this is another Jaime Munguia, just with a lower record, right? And he's Puerto Rican. So this is a fighter that, yeah, in the mix of the 168, I think he'll have good fights. Edgar Berlanga did get to where he's at today with a good amateur pedigree. Okay, this is not a no-name guy. Amateurs that have grown up with him know what kind of fighter he is. He definitely has won some national tournaments throughout his years. But to your point, yes, I mean, from a marketability standpoint, you always get good fights when you get your Puerto Ricans and matched up with your Mexicans, or really any Latin countries, right? Whether it's Argentina versus Mexico, it doesn't matter. The Latin countries always have great turnouts. So here you are with Edgar Berlanga, who has undefeated record, coming off a great win, is Puerto Rican, got the flair, co-signed by Fat Joe, all that great stuff, right? So that would, from a marketability standpoint, make the most sense. But once again, I don't think Edgar Berlanga has really that skill set to beat a David Benavidez or beat a Canelo like a David Benavidez would. So it's unfortunate that we are going to see that in September. But I'm hoping that Canelo picks a different opponent for maybe a later date,
We all are. That's hopefully. I mean, hopefully he surprises us and we do get Benavidez. You have Benavidez on Mexican Independence Day. It's gonna sell. Realistically, money does talk. Saudi, since they're even coming to America now, why can't they? But I also heard Saudi's more interested in Terrence Crawford and Canelo. So we'll see even if that's possible. I don't know. I'm optimistic, so we'll see if it's a Crawford, if it is a David Benavidez, but I don't want to get my hopes up because it's probably going to be a Charlo or Berlanga. So it is what it is, and we just have to call it a day. But as always, man, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. Please let us know who you think Canelo should fight next. If it's not going to be Benavidez, because we already know everybody's going to say Benavidez. We know. But that's probably not happening, so I want to hear who else y'all want to hear. You can follow us on social media. Social media is below. And any last thing, Josh, before we go?
Nah, thanks for tuning in as always, and comment in the comments.
All right. All right, man. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you have a great week. Y'all stay blessed.